All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning. We really appreciate NAMI Queens Nassau appreciates your support. And first, we want to honor somebody who's been really, really important to our community and essential. Lee is going to introduce our first honoree, which is Anita Mancini. But here's NAMI Queens Nassau Board President Lee Israel.
Thank you so much and welcome. Thank you so much and welcome. We are so happy to welcome you all here on this special day to see us and meet us and get to know us as we honor someone very special to us. We have members from our partnership with Northwell here, and one of our partners, Anita Mancini, advisor to Northwell, North Shore Hospital, Long Island Jewish Hospital, and Zucker Hillside Hospital, has made our continuing progress in our communities possible. She is a woman who has helped us through the tough times of the pandemic and pushed us along on our way to recovery with always saying yes and never saying no. And we thank her for that so much. She has also, with her latest yes, made our first in-person meeting as a board possible. And we have been looking forward to this event for a long time. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about her. She is a psychotherapist, a licensed social worker, a founder and board member of the Health and Business Alliance, a crucial organization that pools funds of businesses for profit and nonprofit businesses alike, like us. Our partnership with Northwell and our close working relationship are valued by us more than we can possibly tell. And we look forward to doing more and better things. Anita was on our committee to help us start Pros Unites, one of our newest ventures, and a way for us, and by that I mean NAMI QN, to enlarge our footprint in the Queens community. And we are so thrilled to be here in the Queens community because so many of the people we work with and admire come from Queens. So thank you for being here. For all you do for our community, Anita, for NAMI QN and for the many organizations you support, we look upon you as a hero in the style of the founder of this organization, Arnold Gould, and present the Founders Award to you today as this special personage for us. Thank you so much. No. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to say anything. Thank you.
Photo out. All right, are we ready for Sue? Yes. Okay. Our next award goes to Sue Maida. Sue. Okay. Sue has been angry as long as I know her. For good reason. She could not get the medical support she needed for her son in Michigan. And when she expressed her frustration to the president of NAMI at a state convention in Michigan, the president said to her, "You're an angry mom. Do something about it." And so she did. She started a national movement called Angry Moms. And we were so proud of her ability to mobilize other families with the same problem. You're going to be learning about that at our panel later on today. So Angry Moms was started and it grew into a much needed national movement that is creating change. Stu found us on the internet and
So
joined
this is where Dr.
our
If you
support.
go to subscriptions,
Sorry.
you come down to
She
this,
joined
I
our
think the
support
third
group,
one.
Sharing and Caring. She was one of our kind of founding
Subscriptions
members
down
of
here.
that too. And as the Angry Mom movement grew and went to Washington and made
So
amazing
this is where there's
progress,
a
we
Zoom.
lost her a little bit. We didn't see her every
This is where
Sunday.
Dr.
And so when
Laitman
we
is.
do see her, she's kind of our local
It's
hero from
NAMI.
Michigan. Now we look forward to hearing about her granddaughter because that's about as exciting as Angry Moms too. We honor you, Sue, for your valiant efforts to correct an unforgivable injustice to our loved ones for this and future generations. You are our Michigander NAMI QN hero. Thank you. Hold. We are good.
We're unwrapping it.
Now, is this, will it be on screen? Okay. Jesse is going to zoom in so you can see this plaque, and I'll read it for you. It says, NAMI QN proudly recognizes Sue Maida for your concern and assistance to people with mental health issues and their families. In addition, we value your founding of Angry Moms, September 2024. Okay, I just want to tell Sue we're not meeting tonight. Next week.
We could get Sue back so she could say thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Lee.
Did you want to say anything?
Oh, I already said we're not
No.
meeting tonight.
No.
No, but
Sue.
thank you. And we look forward to your participation in the panel. I'm going to sit in and listen very carefully. And thank you for everything you've done for us.
Thank you, Lee.
Carolann, it's with great pleasure that I present this plaque to you for your dedicated service to NAMI Queens Nassau. You have been a beacon to us in helping others and helping us, and you were a really important part of our board. I remember your membership on the board, your participation, your support of the other members of the board, your teaching classes, and I have to thank you personally for my life-saving family to family class, teach, thank you. And the support groups you've led have helped countless people and still are. And we are forever grateful on the modeling you've done as a board member and a friend and someone who reaches out to the community and meets the needs of people in the community. You have taught classes, you have led support groups. You are a certified grief counselor and are leading groups on suicide and grief and loss. And you help so many people. And we all thank you. And it's a pleasure to present this Community Change Maker Award to you on behalf of all the people who love you.
I want to thank you for the honor of serving NAMI and the help they have given me, also with my family. And thank you and bless all.
And you are a blessing to us.
Okay, next on our list, we have a wonderful MC from Pix 11, Kieran. And she's going to take over for a little bit now and announce some of our prizes, and then we will get to our panel. And thank you all for your patience. Hey, Kieran.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I'll stand up a little bit. I'm a little short. My name is Kieran Dillon. I'm a reporter with Pix 11 News in New York City, and it's an honor to be here today. Welcome to Namiqnfest 2024. We're so excited to have all of you here for this incredible day of mental health awareness, support, and community connection. We have a full schedule ahead, which will include a 3K walk and run, awards and prizes, panel discussions with mental health experts, and of course, an amazing array of organizations tabling at today's events. So I think we are starting with prizes. Yes. Yes. Okay. So we're going to start with the good stuff, prizes.
Yes. Yes. So we'll announce the raffles at the end, but first we'd like to give an award to a person who went above and beyond. She was the first person to start her team for this fundraiser. And pretty much every 48 hours, she had another team member, another contribution. Large, small, it didn't matter. She worked this like there's no tomorrow. So, Lee, I want you to introduce our team who did the most.
Yeah. It is my pleasure to introduce my star pupil from one of the COVID family to family classes we had, one of the most special classes I've ever taught, a woman who at the beginning of the class said very little and by the end was practically running it and has been a vocal supporter of everything we do at NAMI Queens Nassau. Where is Crystal? Crystal Lawrence? I don't see her. Okay, so should we skip her and then come back to her? I don't see her.
So we're going to move on.
Let's move on. I'll be back.
You're up.
Okay. All right, everybody. So we are going to have two amazing panels today. We're going to start with the first. So to kick things off, we're going to be having a panel discussion featuring some of the leading experts in mental health. So the first person I'd like to call up or introduce is Dr. Robert Laitman. He is a renowned expert in the treatment of schizophrenia with a focus on incorporating both medical and holistic approaches to care.
While Dr. Laitman is coming up, let me give you a hug, my star people and my star mother. This is Crystal Lawrence. Your star.
I was gonna say something.
Good afternoon, good morning. My name is Crystal Lawrence, and I just want to tell you, it was a pleasure for me and my family and friends to participate. This is our second year, and without NAMI, my family would not have progressed to where we are today, and I want to thank everybody who participates.
Okay, so I'll just redo the introduction. So we have Dr. Robert Laitman. He's a renowned expert in the treatment of schizophrenia with the focus on incorporating both medical and holistic approaches to care. Thank you for being here, Dr. Laitman. Then we have Dr. Ann Mandel, who is an internist with years of experience specializing in treating patients with severe mental health disorders. Welcome. We're also going to bring in Sue Maida, who is the founder, we saw her, of Angry Moms. She's made significant strides in advocating for better mental health services and support for families dealing with mental illness. And finally, last but not least, Dr. Joseph Squitieri. Am I saying that right?
Yes. yeah.
Great. Dr. Joseph Squitieri, Division Director for Adult Ambulatory Psychiatry for Psychosis. He's a key leader in providing services for adults experiencing psychosis. So we really want to welcome all of you to the panel. It'll be an incredible discussion. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody, to today's panel discussion focused on mental health and recovery. We understand that many of you have personal experiences with serious mental illness, whether it be family members or your own struggles. Our collective goal is to seek and share the best treatment protocols available and to clarify what recovery can truly look like. Thank you for being here, and let's work together towards a deeper understanding of mental health treatment and recovery. So now I'm going to ask a couple of questions. My first question is, Dr. Laitman.
Yes.
Adherence to medication is a very big concern for all illness, but especially those with MI in particular. The presentation of psychosis, with this in mind, do you recommend beginning with what is considered a medication of last resort, clozapine first, if the diagnosis is clearly schizophrenia? I'm just going to bring Sue.
Such a good question to start with. As many of you are aware, what's a big stumbling block for a lot of our kids? The unawareness of illness, anosognosia. And you can often see that even at the beginning of illness. So if you're presented with someone and the engagement is not sufficient, that you can guarantee that the child, young adult, will stay on clozapine, I would not start initially with clozapine. But if it is a setting where you can get full engagement, be it from buy-in with the child, adequate support from the family, or if needed, even court-mandated treatment, then I would start with clozapine. But you need engagement. We have a protocol where I think we call it the EASE protocol. So we believe in early treatment with clozapine because we know that the earliest you intervene with psychotic illnesses with the most effective treatment, the better people do. And then we're very assertive. We have the wraparound services, NAMI and all the rest, and then we're very slow at introducing it. But the last E of E's remains engagement. And if you don't have engagement, you really can't use clozapine. And also when we talk about engagement, we talk about engagement in the community and avoiding isolation and all the rest. But yeah, so bottom line, yes, if you have engagement, I use clozapine right off the bat.
Thank you. And all these doctors will be here to answer any questions that you have for your specific questions. Dr. Mandel, do you want to do that?
Sure. We do have people in our practice who, a lot of them have come to us on clozapine, a lot of them have come to us on other antipsychotics, and in order to be switched over to clozapine. Sometimes you need a long-acting injectable if you really can't engage someone and you need to calm them down enough and get them engaged enough to accept the clozapine. Clozapine is the most well-accepted antipsychotic. People stay on it the longest. They live the longest. they're able to engage in their recovery. So the earlier, and I've also found when I use it earlier, I tend to need lower doses, so the side effects are not as severe. I'm not good. There's no studies on this, although they're doing first episode psychosis programs with early clozapine now, so we may have an answer to that soon. So I can't say specifically, but the people that I've seen, I have needed relatively low doses. But yes, it's reasonable to start with something else if that's the way you can engage someone. But I've seen really good results using it first. So yeah, I think that it's a very reasonable thing to do. It's not easy to use, but yeah. No, that's okay.
Dr. Squitieri?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting question. And I think, the training has always been, for psychiatrists to think of clozaril as a last resort medication. And I think that's been slow to change. But we do know that clozaril is extremely effective. We know that it reduces hospitalizations. We know that people functioning improve dramatically. The way we kind of still are operating a little bit at Northwell at Zucker is, we will try other medications first, generally, like LAIs were mentioned. So those are long-acting injectables, and they show an increase not only in compliance, but actually they show improvement in symptoms regardless of whether there's a compliance issue or not. People just seem to improve their functioning better. But if generally, if two medications have failed, or if the CGI score, which is a scale we use to see how people are improving over time from their baseline, if that score is 4 or higher, then generally we will move to clozapine. But I definitely agree with the doctors up here that, rather than waiting for medications to not necessarily be effective, if you do have a motivated, engaged patient, clozaril can be extremely effective.
Yeah. I also want to add, there's often quoted study in the literature that was done in 2003. It was done in China, so I guess we all have to take it with a grain of salt, but it was done with Dr. Lieberman, who was the chair at Columbia until recently, where he randomized 160 patients to clozapine versus thorazine. And we're going to be talking about another drug that CAR-XT. I'm sure you guys have all heard about it, where we're basing all of this on 5 weeks of data. Well, the study with Lieberman and looking at, is that a little loud? Looking at it at 12 weeks showed that clozapine had a meaningful recovery rate. And this was a reduction of symptoms by 50%, which is a lot higher standard than anything else in over 80% of the individuals. And a lot of these people achieve this as early as 6 to 8 weeks. A lot of the benefit, and there was not only benefits in positive symptoms, which we talk about the hallucinations and the delusions, but when we're talking about meaningful recovery, we're talking about negative symptoms, the inability to get started, the lack of enjoyment, the avoidance of things, anosognosia as well, and then the cognitive issues. And they saw improvements in all of those domains at 12 weeks that were clinically significant. Unfortunately, then they sent them out to the Nethers in China, and the compliance rate went down to about 40% or so, actually 40 to 50%. And everything kind of regressed to the mean. But at 12 weeks with good treatment, first episode, clozapine dramatically outperformed thorazine. And thorazine was the first drug that was out there. And if you're going to look at treatment effects, all the other antipsychotics are fairly similar, except for clozapine. When you're talking about treatment effects, in terms of improvement, we talk about standard deviations from the norm, one standard deviation being an enormous treatment effect. Usually when we talk antipsychotics, we're talking a half a standard deviation. With the more recent CAR-XT, the phase 3 study, I think it was a little over 0.6, right? It wasn't terrible. Clozapine is a treatment effect over 1. It's dramatically more.
Thank you, Dr. Laitman. Okay, Sue, Maida, hi. My question for you is, what exactly does success and failure look at like? What do you see as recovery for schizophrenia?
Muted.
Liz?
Probably muted on her end.
One.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, success at first for our loved one was the lack of the screaming and throwing and anger when he was on an LAI against his will. But at least he was no longer violent and disappearing all the time. But it was far from success because he was miserable and said his life was over. He felt nothing, and what was the point of going on? On clozapine, success looks like my son again. He's loving, he's kind, he's involved in the family.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Dr. Mandel, I'm going to give you the same question. What exactly does success and failure look like in your practice and recovery from schizophrenia?
Our definition, we have a definition of meaningful recovery, and meaningful recovery for us means being involved, being fully involved in your life, being able to get at least a part-time job, 20 hours a week, going back to school, running a family. We have, Dr. Laitman's been to 2 weddings in the past year. People have girlfriends and boyfriends, but what are our numbers? 80%?
No, we're in the 70s.
The 70%
Yeah.
for that meaningful recovery. And it doesn't mean you're going to see it in the first 6 months. It doesn't mean you're going to see it in the first year. But if you keep working at it, the longer you've been ill, the more connections you have to reform in your brain. The more recovery there is, it can take a very long time if you've been ill for a long time. But we do see progress toward that meaningful recovery with our clozapine protocol. So that's what we're looking for.
Thank you. Dr. Squitieri, how do you judge when to change course with the medication? When would it be time to try clozapine?
Right, so I think usually we think of 2 failed med trials, but again, I think that's a little bit of a dated kind of approach to it. So I think if you had someone who's not doing well on a medication, you can try clozapine if they're engaged, if they're ready for it, if their family and the patient are on board, because you do kind of need a group effort, right, to make clozapine work. It's usually not done in isolation. So, I think you can start it sooner rather than later.
Okay, Dr. Laitman, would you consider helping to advocate for the removal of REMS as across the country? This is a tremendous obstacle and burden for families trying to administer clozapine.
Yeah, thank you, Angry Moms, for weaponizing something that Team Daniel, that's and my charity, have been talking about for really the last 12 years. And it became apparent to me very early on that the initial estimates of the risks of clozapine, especially when talking about the risk of the very low white count, were grossly exaggerated. So as most of you know, let me just give you a little background. If you're going to be on clozapine as it presently stands, you need to have a normal what's called neutrophil count. That neutrophils are what we use to fight infections. Very important to have these things. And then you can start clozapine. Recently, 2018, was that? Yeah, 2018, they changed the requirements a little bit. They recognized that people of color can start with a little bit lower white count. It used to be 2,000, now it's 1,500. And with people of color, it's 1,000. But what they mandate is that you have to go every week. And they will only give you enough clozapine weekly. So they're essentially rationing the clozapine. And God forbid you miss a blood draw and your doctor isn't aware that the site, and there is a central site that the FDA controls, the REMS site, where you can enter and you can, if your doctor is knowledgeable, and you can override that requirement, but most doctors don't do that. So I've had kids miss, and I can just say, doctor discretion, please dispense. And what happens often is pharmacies are not aware of it. So there's a lot of ignorance with REMS, and you have to do these blood counts every week for the first 26 weeks, and then every 2 weeks for the next 26 weeks, and then for life every month. Now, what's the data? Why are we doing this? Well, it's based on 1970s data, where in 1975, in several small Finnish village, 16 women developed this condition where they dropped their white count very low and 8 died. Now, it turns out a lot of these women had a certain genetic predisposition to severe neutropenia, and they were on other medications. But nevertheless, while clozapine was being explored in the United States, all research stopped at that point. Europe, being a little bit more progressive than us, reintroduced clozapine because people suffered without it. And it was in Europe in the 70s, and Gil Honensfeld, working with Sandoz, brought clozapine back to the United States. He started working with this in 1973, and he's joined with the Angry Moms and Team Daniel, trying to get rid of this monitoring system. Gil was the originator of this monitoring system. When he put this in place, when clozapine first came back to the United States in 1989, we thought there was about a 3% incidence. 3 in 100 is a lot of people that would develop this. And he originally put this in place to gather information. And then after 5 years, to have this monitoring system reevaluated. It never happened. It got codified and it's been stuck. So the best data that's out there is from a fellow in Maudsley, England, where the original Bedlam came from. And he's followed 3,400 individuals now over 14 years. And the incidence of this severe effect was 0.23. That's 2 in 1,000 individuals developing it. Of those people, all of them developed in the first 18 weeks. Nothing after that. We just had a recent study out of Johns Hopkins, where they've been following for the last 10 years over 1,000 individuals. The incidence of the severe neutrophil count happening was 0. We've been doing this for 18 years. We've been involved with several hundred, if not 1,000. Our incidence is 0. Across Europe, the incidence is very low. A recent Finnish study, just to add some confusion, they found an incidence of 1%, but they did not quantify their neutrophil counts. So we don't even know if it was true severe, what we call agranulocytosis, this condition. So we're going to talk to the FDA November 19th. Sue will be there. I'm going to hopefully present as well. Rachel Strife, who's kind of the co-founder along with Sue Maida, will be there, and a lot of experts. And we hope they listen, because we're losing all of these kids. If you just look at the potential benefits of clozapine, we make it so difficult to use a medicine that is associated with 10 years longer survival, decreases the risk of suicide, I'll use the lower number, by 80%. And in the first year of illness is so rarely used. And in the first year of illness, we lose upwards of 3% of our population. to suicide. So yeah, I want this mandatory blood work changed. And what I want to change to is an education site. Because what I found and what Dr. Mandel, by the way, we're husband and wife, but for full disclosure, and we're only here because of our son Daniel developing schizophrenia. So a little background, I'm a nephrologist, my wife's an internist. We're self-taught and also taught by a lot of the greats. I mean, I became friends with E. Fuller Torrey, Deborah Levy, oh geez. I should really mute this, shouldn't I? It's potential spam, so the heck with that. You know, so we've been doing this for a while. Now I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Washington. So we're hoping, we're really hoping that they listen to us because the evidence is overwhelming and we're missing such an opportunity with so many people because it's so difficult. It's curse a little bit. It's a pain in the ass to do clozapine. We get constant calls. The management is tricky. Oh, and we want to make it an education site because we found some of the clozapine regimens, to say the least, a little crazy. There's things you have to know. You have to do the medicine. So it is hard. And I think the psychiatric community is ready to do better. You know, they're all very excited by CAR XT, but we have something right now that's not used that is multiple fold more effective. So yeah, I want to change it.
Thank you.
That was my short answer.
Dr. Squitieri,
Yes.
Zucker Hillside was part of the research study years ago for clozapine. Why isn't it used more frequently?
Yes, so there are, as Dr. Mandela talked about, there are many reasons that clozaril is not used more frequently. One of them actually is about education. Providers often feel like they're not really ready or able to kind of explain the risks and the side effects of this medication to the patients and families. We recently, Health First recently contacted us from Medicaid.
Donna.
Yeah, for Donna. And that was such a great conversation because they really want to increase the utility of the medication because they know that it saves money in the end. They know that people improve. They know that there's a dramatic response. So they want to try to find ways and try to break down the barriers. So one of them is trying to give education, health literate education to patients and families so that they can really appreciate the risks and the benefits of the medication and again, dispelling some of the myths and what's not true. The regular blood work and monitoring is a big thing. Some families and patients, find it difficult to get to the clinic, every week for blood draws. We have been able to fix that a little bit there's some home blood draw companies out there that we've been utilizing that actually do help and can come to the individual's home to do blood draws. So, but that's still, the REMS is still a big issue. So I'm hopeful for that November meeting that we'll see some improvement. We even talked to Health First about point of care, hemoglobin A1C. So, doing a finger stick like someone would do for their glucose rather than having to go for a blood draw every week would make a big difference. And then also, the discussion around reimbursement, you all mentioned that it is more complicated for providers. It is a longer visit. It does require, more conversation, more review of the medical situation and the symptoms. So, if reimbursement can catch up to that and try to understand that clozapine is a bit more difficult for providers and patients, I think that would go a long way too.
Thank you, Dr. Squitieri. Sue, Maida, I just want you to talk a little bit about your Angry Moms Advocacy Group.
Well, it wasn't something I planned on starting, and I don't really claim it as mine. I just met a wonderful man, and he was very kind, and he listened to me. And then Dr. Gillison hooked me up with Dr. Duckworth, and then we had a listening session with NAMI, They were extremely compassionate and helpful. And then SMPAA got involved. And as more families found out that their stories were important to be heard, they started sharing them. And more people, unfortunately, all the time are finding us on Facebook because they're desperate for help. And we're just trying to help them find avenues to get help for their children or their loved ones. And we're growing, and but it's really hard because the majority of us are traumatized for many, many years, and we fall in and out of having the capability to participate in things because we're dealing with crisis situations constantly. So it's a hard thing to get everyone on the same page. And we just thank God every day for Dr. Mandel and Laitman for staying strong and leading us.
Thank you. Did,
Hi, guys. So I asked if I could ask a question. I hope that's okay. It's a little bit of mix of my own personal experience, recent personal experience, as well as some reporting I've done in the past. So because I have done some mental health reporting on schizophrenia in particular. This is actually a personal question. I hope it's not being recorded. I have a cousin who's 29 years old who up until recently had no symptoms of mental health issues. And this summer, at the beginning of July, he presented with hallucinations and paranoia, and I'm sure anybody that's here knows these signs. So he was doing heavy THC, marijuana, and he has subsequently been hospitalized. He was hospitalized for about a month. They've sent him away to sort of rehab to deal with that, and also with the mental health. They're trying to figure out now a diagnosis. I'd say only now have the hallucinations and the paranoia decreased. And I guess as a family, we're wondering how much the THC had a part in this, and whether this would have, they still have not diagnosed him. We're not sure what the diagnosis will be. But I guess I wonder how much the THC would have maybe triggered a gene of some kind, or not. If he hadn't been doing as much marijuana, would it have been? And what is your what are your professional opinions on the use of marijuana? And I know he was a bit older. He's 29 than usually when it presents for boys, but I know there's a lot of questions in there, but specifically about the marijuana, I'm just curious how that may have played a part in what has happened to him.
I'm long-winded, so why don't you start? You sure?
Sure. I was just going to say marijuana now is so variable. There's so, depending on where it comes from, it can be much more potent than it used to be. So it certainly can. I've seen it on inpatient units and outpatient. I've seen, it triggers psychosis or triggers some very serious psychiatric symptoms. So I think that definitely could have been part. And then it depends if there's like a predisposition, if there's some genetic susceptibility that the person has, then there's more of a likelihood that drugs or substances could trigger symptoms. Yeah.
So it initially presented as cannabis-induced psychosis, but now they're looking at whether there's a gene underlying. I guess my overall question is just, if the marijuana was not present, would this have happened anyways down the road?
So let me give you my personal experience. My sister and I both were, the three children of my family, my siblings, were the more experimental kids. And my sister tried pot when she was about 18 years old, got paranoid, thought, oh, must be bad pot. Tried it again, got paranoid. She didn't relate this to me. So when I was 18 years old, I tried pot, got paranoid. I said, must be bad pot. Tried it again. Paranoid again, and said, no. Now, I have a grandfather with schizophrenia, an aunt with bipolar illness, and an uncle who had schizophrenia. But I was 18. So genes play a major role. We've identified several risk genes that will, with not full predictive value, because as Dr. Oh my God, Squitieri said, there's so much difference between individuals. And also, my pot was 4% THC. The pot that you guys are getting these days, the THC content, and that's the real problem, is the THC be 20, 30, 40%. It is a much more potent variant. So yes, we know that there's genes, and what also THC is doing, and you know, unfortunately, the research is a little behind times because it's been a controlled substance until recently. But what we're learning now that they are doing the research is the genes. So there's the genetics you're born with, and then there's something called epigenetics, where the genes will change over time and can actually, these genes can be transmitted down to your children. And with THC, the changes that go on can and do become permanent. That's what we're starting to see. So yes, when I have a kid who clearly it was with cannabis, we withdraw the cannabis, obviously, and then you watch it and you wait. You don't necessarily start an antipsychotic immediately, or if you do, you start something, and in this setting, it doesn't have to be clozapine. It could be anything to just symptom control, and you use as little as you get away with. But if they don't clear, and no one knows how long, I'm not going to tell you how long. All right, I'll tell you how long.
Tell me how long.
I know you want to know how long. I usually give people 6 months. If you're 6 months abstinent, at that stage, and you're not having good control of the psychosis, and I guarantee you he did not get clozapine first time out, it's time to change. So even though the old standard were 2 drugs and use clozapine, and that's still what the APA guidelines are, we know that if you fail a good clinical trial, because as I already told you, most of these antipsychotics really have very similar treatment effects. You know, you can go from one to the other. So unless you start with another drug besides olanzapine, your chances of success to switch to another drug, and with olanzapine, it's 7%. That's the literature. I think it's less than that. But with another drug, they're dismally small, way less than 5%. So if this is your cousin, if your cousin's still psychotic, 6 months in, failed, I don't know, what did they put him on?
I don't know what they have them on.
Yeah, I downed it's clozapine. It probably at 6 months, it's time for clozapine. The other thing nice about clozapine, when we're talking about substance abuse, so it's got the FDA guideline for treatment failure, quote unquote treatment failure. And we always talk about treatment-resistant schizophrenia. We talk about that being only 30–40% of the population. My wife and I like to make that a little larger population. Our idea is that in the general community, meaningful recovery in the best studies is about 14%. So we feel that as opposed to calling clozapine the last resort, it's the gold standard and everyone should have an opportunity to be on it. So that's, but at least 86%. And again, when we're talking about these illnesses, you're talking about schizophrenia and say, oh, it's one gene, it's that gene. No, we've identified now counting over 400 genes. It's a really complex, I always call it a complex genetic neurodevelopmental disorder, and it's often coupled with substance abuse, these epigenetic changes. So it's a really complicated illness. So not everyone who has the diagnosis is the same. So I'm very fond of not worrying so much about the diagnosis, but talking about psychosis spectrum disorders. So the other indication I already talked about was suicide, but the third indication, which it doesn't have the FDA indication for, I'm eventually getting to the point, is that it's useful for substance abuse.
Right.
People feel better. As Dr. Mandel Anne, said, you know, the level of recovery is so much greater. And that's why they stay on it. You know, after a year, the best studies with clozapine are well over 80% compliance rates right now. And that's been our experience as well. You know, the first 6 months to a year can be a little hairy. It's tough to get there in a lot of cases because you have to work through the side effects, you have to work through the anosognosia, but they get there. But, you know, just to keep them on it and keep them off the other drugs. I mean, I think that's critically important.
Can you talk 1 minute on can you talk 1 minute on what's happened when you've tried to taper people down who have had?
Oh, yeah,
cannabis
sure.
psychosis because-
So, yeah, no, I've been working with a guy by the name of Keshavan, Machary Keshavan. Let's get his name right. I'm terrible at it. So he's the vice chair at Harvard. And he's talked to me about, you know, again, as I said, the heterogeneity of the illness. And he talks about different biotypes. So a typical biotype is the typical neurodevelopmental stuff, which really was like our son Daniel, where he was different. I mean, my firstborn, Corey, was walking and talking Pledge of Allegiance before she was 2. You know, Daniel could barely walk before he was 2. He's still crawling around. So neurodevelopmentally, very, very different. We were told of immaturity, clumsiness, and this is really characteristic of a large subgroup of kids that go on and develop psychotic illnesses. Another example of that is like with autism spectrum. Fully 20% will go on and develop psychotic disorders. So that's biotype 1. Biotype 2 is kids that really were doing pretty well, maybe not perfect, and they were tootling along until their adolescence, which is usually when they go to college, they're subjected to a lot of stress. And it's also a critical period of neurodevelopment where what we call pruning, competitive pruning happens. Are you guys seen Harry Potter? So, you know, like the stairwells in Harry Potter where when they're going to Gryffindor or they're going to, you know, it changes, your brain changes and pathways change. And a minute, yeah. So that's biotype 2, where there's competitive pruning going on and there's over pruning that happens. And then there's biotype 3, which is probably your cousin, where they're great. They're sailing along and all of a sudden, be it in their 20s, even later, they develop a psychotic disorder, and those are often associated with substance abuse. So the hypothesis was biotype 1, they all need clozapine. And that's what we found. They're really neurodevelopmental. They have a severe illness. There's more going on. Biotype 2, the majority do best with clozapine. But biotype 3, the thought was maybe these people could get by with a short course of an antipsychotic or nothing at all and just have the drug withdrawn. So given that knowledge, and it's, you know, an ongoing study still, so we don't have it. This is pre-publication stuff I'm talking about. I decided to take 3 of my kids that sounded like your cousin and very slowly try to withdraw clozapine. And I'm talking about withdrawing it over a year or 2 years. I hate to tell you, I'm 0 for 3. Every single one of these kids had to go back on. And then a co-founder, Rachel's child in Arizona, she tried the same thing with her kid, who's straight A student, doing great, clearly with substance abuse. Same thing, had to go back on. So my lesson is the changes are permanent. And I try to treat to populations. I don't try to treat to the exception, because if you do that, you're going to do more harm than good. And I think you just have to be aware and cognizant. I'm not saying not to try very carefully, but in 4 cases, and that is a very small number, I've been a dismal failure with withdrawal of drug. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you so much for that question because it is an incredibly common question with the legalization of pot. It just triple folded a lot of issues. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for this panel. Incredibly helpful and insightful for most people here, I'm sure, and very thankful for you being here this morning. Thanks. Yay!
I know, I thought you might.
It's all good. We're very thankful for all three of you. So thank you.
Thank you for putting up with me.
So we have our next panel discussion is going to be about mental health housing. And why are there so many mental health housing people tabling here today? It is the number one reason people call NAMI Queens NASA besides crisis. So we have a panel and Kieran's going to introduce them.
Okay, guys, so we're going to move on to our second panel for the afternoon. As we heard there, it is a mental health housing panel. The first person we're going to call up is Yolanda Robano-Gross. She is the CEO of Options for Community Living. She's dedicated to providing the group is dedicated to providing quality housing and support for individuals dealing with mental health challenges. Yolanda? Yolanda? Great, thank you so much. And next, we're going to call up Larry Grubler. He was the CEO of Transitional Services for New York. He spent decades leading efforts to provide mental health housing and rehabilitation services. Larry?
He's here.
He's here? Great. Thank you. And next, we're going to bring up James Mutton, who is the Associate Executive Director of New York City Operations at Concern Housing, which is a passionate advocacy group for expanding access to mental health housing and support. James? Great. All right, guys, let's give them a round of applause. And I just want to mention to everybody on the outskirts, I know that you guys are all checking out some of the tables as well as the raffles, but we're going to hopefully just quiet down a little bit so that we can all listen to the panel. And if I have to go around, I will ask everybody to quiet down. Thank you, guys. Hi. Yeah, go ahead. Please sit down.
They really are.
Jim, do you want one of the fancy ones?
Do you want a fancy microphone?
Padded mic. Exactly.
They're on. You need to wrap.
Okay, everybody.
I was.
So just once again, you guys, to everybody on the outside, we're going to be doing another panel. So if it's possible, if everyone can just quiet down a little bit so that we can hear from the experts. Thank you.
Okay. To the next one. To where the question.
I feel bad. It's the second year they got rained out.
Oh, I can do it.
This year.
Okay, you can No, you can do it. It's what you
I was wondering if.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Is that?
No, they.
All right, guys, we're going to start with the question. So once again, we have Yolanda Robano-Gross, Larry Grubler, and James Mutton that are here helping us. So the first question that I have for you is, adherence to medication is a very...
No, that's us.
Did I do that wrong?
You're asking us the psychosis question.
Okay, so sorry about that. I was going to ask you the same questions as the other doctors. The first question is, how does a person obtain mental health housing?
You know?
How does a person ever?
All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for believing in recovery. Thank you for caring for all your loved ones. It's a pleasure to be here on Sunday. So we're all in the housing business. We do a variety of different types of housing across New York City and Long Island. And depending on where you live, there is typically a single point of entry to housing. So if you have a loved one in New York City, there's what's known as a Coordinated Assessment Placement System, or CAPS, that is the one-stop shop to get into supportive housing across all the 5 boroughs. And that is with the Human Resources Administration, the City of New York. So there's a survey or a questionnaire that is typically done online. It tells you, well, first of all, you answer a few questions about your loved one or yourself, what you're interested in, what your needs and preferences are, and it will give you a sense of what you're eligible for right there and then. So if you are a candidate for supportive housing, there's typically an application process. It used to be known as the HRA 2010E. I think it still is the 2010E. But the survey is really the kicking off point. If you're on Long Island, in Nassau or Suffolk counties, there's what's known as a single point of access system, or SPOA, which runs through the local county. And it's a similar process. It's a questionnaire. It's usually submitted by a social worker, a doctor, a therapist on your behalf.
Can I ask a question, Larry, before you to answer? So the first time somebody said to me, SPOA, I thought, is this another illness I'm supposed to understand the definition of? So in terms of this single point of access, this form available online, my other life, I'm a web developer. I'm all over it. Most people are not. So that process is foreboding for so very many. And especially if your life's upside down. So just the filling out of that form and having the ability to have all the information for that form, what advice do you give, or what is the first set of questions that your intake or people to make that process not so foreboding? Because it's like getting Medicaid or Medicare, in my opinion, so, okay.
And I have been in the mental health field for 42 years. Even though I look like I'm 15, it's been a very long time, and I actually hate that process because it's a lot of work. So my first question to you, before we even get there, I'm really curious as to how many of you are interested in housing for yourselves and or a family member? Okay, there's a couple there. My first step, and I've done this a couple of times, is we offer, before you even get to the point of filling out all the paperwork, come in and take a tour of the various housing opportunities so that you can see what they look like. Because when Jim mentioned supported housing, if I mentioned a supervised residence, how many people know the difference between those?
They don't.
One or two. Some people know the difference, some people don't. And so I've been asking people, and I make my staff available to come in, take a tour of the various facilities, and explore what services are available in those specific, whether it's a supervised residence or scattered site supported housing or apartment treatment. Then on top of that, to add to your point about the paperwork, which is sometimes cumbersome, I have my staff available to go ahead and assist with that if you need that. They will also assist the social workers. If they're being referred by a social worker or a therapist, I'm sure you guys do the same thing, because it can be difficult. I have social workers calling me and saying, okay, what does this question actually mean? And how do I fill it out? So there are people within all of our agencies that will assist you. And I think that that's key. You don't have to be afraid and alone when you're filling out the paperwork. And you're not alone, because many people have come before you filling out the paperwork, doing the same exact thing, and got their family members into housing.
Do people ever come to you from Suffolk County? You're in the city, you're in Queens. Do you immediately refer them to somebody else? Or does it matter what county you live in?
Yeah, we definitely do. So for argument's sake, we serve Nassau and Suffolk County. We, as a group of providers, and, just about everybody in this room, I see my old team that's over at Well Life, and, we work together. So we can say, you're from Queens. Well, I might not be able to serve you, but we're going to give a family member or an individual what we call a soft handoff. So I can call Larry and say, look, this person's in Queens. Here's the information. Can you manage them? Or You know, if we have someone that's specific, looking for veterans benefits, we as a unit of providers know who our people are and we know who specialize in what. So we will try, look, we say it all the time, you've made that phone call, but for yourself or for your loved one or whoever. Sometimes that phone call is the last bit of bandwidth someone has. So the answer can't be, sorry, we don't serve Queens, because that may be the last bit of effort they have in them. So the answer is, you know what, we don't serve Queens, but I can get you somebody that does. Or we don't serve Manhattan, but I get you, or you need something veteran specific, well, you know, let me call Beacon House and see if they can help you. So it's important to know that if you get to one of us, in essence, you get to all of us. So we can get you to the right person if it's not the person you happen to get on the phone.
I often explain it, it's very different in the not-for-profit world compared to the for-profit world like McDonald's and Burger King. We're not in competition.
Correct.
We actually are there to help people, and if I need to call Jim, that's what I need to do. I'm not gonna lose money if I do that. So I often make that comparison.
Unfortunately, in our world, there is more than enough business to go around, and our goal is to put ourselves out of business because we can serve everybody out there that needs it.
We're all busy running agencies, but you will get a call back from any one of us. You will leave your name and number, we'll give you our name and number, and you will hear from us. We're not gonna leave you high and dry. You know, it's important.
Sincerely, firsthand knowledge, this is true, which is why I asked that question. Very different than other parts of our world, you know, that these guys do communicate with each other. Thank you. And thank you for all of that. Okay. All right, so what are the odds? So now you've filled out your application, you've toured something, you're in it. What's the timing? What are the odds that our loved one finds a place to live? What's the time?
That really depends on the type of housing that you're looking for, the type of housing that is available in stock at that very moment. And I've specifically presented at NAMI a lot of times, and I say to the parents and family members, because they say, Larry, it's impossible to get the person admitted into housing. It's not impossible, but if you don't have your family member's name on the list, it's impossible.
Right.
If you don't start the process, and there are people in this room that I've known and I met through the NAMI network that I've said, just get your family member's name on the list. If a bed becomes available, great. If they're not ready at that very moment, they pass it up and they'll be on the next list. That's fine. But if you don't start the process, you're not going to get anywhere. So it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. It really depends.
Okay.
Most of us are responsible for taking state and city referrals first, but sometimes are not state and city referrals that are coming to us. That part of our business is a business. We have to fill our beds, right? So if we're not getting an appropriate referral from the state and the city, and a family member does refer somebody that is appropriate for our services, then that's the person who gets the bed. It's really that simple. It's not that complicated. Sometimes we have to fight with the state and the city and say, we took that person because you didn't have a referral for us, but that's our job. But if you don't get your family member on the list, and I mean this sincerely, regardless of who they're not going to get housing.
And I would say to be a little tolerant of maybe taking something that's, 15, 20 minutes away from you if it's available, even though everybody wants their loved one around the corner. Sometimes it's easier to work from within the system than promote out of it. So if an opportunity comes, it's the right level of care, it's what your person needs. Let them take the opportunity and then they can wait for something maybe closer to home or, something that they're prefer more than that, but get them in as far as possible. Larry's right there. You can't start without starting. So I hear a lot from parents that say, but I won't be ready for another year or two. Well, okay. You can always say no. But if you can't stop, in a year or two comes, and then you're in a situation, then you're starting from scratch.
Yeah, many of us also do trial visits.
Yeah.
So if you want to check something out, you're not sure, you want to do a couple of nights, see how that is, that can be arranged.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm going to skip to a question that's more online. Living with dignity. Talk to me about why mental health housing and supportive housing is so important. Tell me what you do. Why is this important for our loved ones to be cared for? Not on the street, but.
Well, first of all, it's such a great question and so many things go through my mind. I service 1,000 people in housing alone. If those 1,000 people were not housed with me somewhere, the majority of them would be on the streets.
Right.
They wouldn't necessarily be with family members. They're not that hooked up with family members now so that they would be on the streets. But more importantly, from a dignity standpoint, what we're doing, we're called transitional services. We transition people from a point in their life where they need a lot of support to a point in their life where they need less support. So you could go, if you need this, from a supervised living setting where you need staff available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Then you learn skills, you learn how to function on your own in the community. You go to apartment treatment and then to supported housing where you may be visited once a month. It's very hard for people that are sitting in an audience to actually envision what that means or what that looks like. But how many people here live in an apartment building? I do. I live in an apartment building now. We might have, I've presented out in the community and looked and shown the apartment that we might have somebody housed in, and it's the same apartment building that you might be living in, but you wouldn't know that they're receiving mental health housing. Right? So and people go, they can't be living there. That's where I live. Yeah, it is where you live. And we have an apartment there that we rent and we provide services. So there's getting people off the streets. There's decreasing the stress that the family feels because dealing with somebody that has a psychiatric disability is not easy. It could be very draining. And it's providing dignity to move on with your life and become more independent in the community. So those are the first three things that come to my mind.
And just to add to that, I mean, without a place to live, you can't do anything, right? I mean, we use this term, housing is healthcare.
Yep.
It really is. A safe and comfortable place to live is the building block for everything else in our lives. That's what we're about. We're about giving people privacy and dignity with just the right amount of supports to thrive.
Thank you. To that point, Yolanda, you probably don't remember me saying this to me, but I live in Huntington and she's like, Liz, I have housing in Huntington. You just don't know it's there. It's part of your community.
You don't know, and that's the blessing of our facilities and our houses. You don't know. You drive down the block and you're not going to know our house from your house.
Right.
A lot of times I get neighbors that don't even realize till, way into it that house is owned by us. And that's the point of it, that someone can live in a community independently as possible with the supports they need, but that dignity to, not have to live with their mom and be able to work or go to school or whatever that next step looks like for them. I don't even know how to say it. It's incomparable. They have to be able to have it. And that's what we're able to provide for people.
It's part of self-determination and
Sure.
that's so important.
Yeah.
Part of being a human being. What can we do to help in the terms of not in my backyard, advocating for, is it low-income housing, or how do you classify yourselves in terms of what we support when we vote and when people talk? What is it exactly that you need from us to help advocate for more housing?
It's a really hard question. Actually, it's an excellent question and a hard question. So we need the support to, when you talk to your local public officials, when you talk to community members, to talk about the fact that 1 in 4 people do suffer from a psychiatric disability. It's most likely that somebody that you're living next to has a psychiatric disability already. We don't know. That housing can and should be built in your area, and that you can push to have it be accepted in your area. I give tours at least once a week of our facilities, because I'm up here talking right now, and none of you, I can guarantee, envision what my building looks like. I wish I had a picture of it, because it really is gorgeous. I gave a tour last week to a foundation, and they said it's really funny, there are for rent signs outside of other buildings that say luxury housing for rent. And it doesn't look like luxury housing. My building looks like luxury housing. I would live in my building. It really is beautiful. What's the difference? The difference is when you own your own private building and you're renting it out to people, you're not necessarily monitored by city and state coming in and doing inspections of you every 15 minutes. I have to be honest. So we have to maintain our facilities at a higher standard than other private people. So what you can do to help, you can definitely advocate with the public officials. The governor has been, I will tell you, has been excellent about providing $1 billion this last year into mental health services. The unfortunate part of that, which you're not aware of and I wasn't aware of, is that the State Office of Mental Health at this very moment doesn't know how to gain access to that $1 billion. So I'm sitting on property now that I have the property. I'm waiting for the funding to come down so that I could knock it down and start to build housing for 150 additional people and getting them off the street. I have funding for getting people, a commitment of funding for getting, we have 29 beds. In those 29 beds, we're gonna, every 3 months, we're gonna have people that are coming directly off the streets with a psychiatric disability and then transition into a housing program, into more permanent housing. They will be off the streets. If I can find a site, we can get up to 60 to 100 people off the streets every single year. That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
If you know realtors, please send them my way. If you know of a site, if you own a home that you want to donate or just sell, let us know.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways, but it's a really multifaceted question because I'm constantly begging for real estate.
I would say too, just on the most basic level, if someone's moved into your community, if you see an agency like ours in your community, your neighbors are buzzing and we get a lot of, those people, just get out there and say, look, those people aren't those people, they're us. 1 in 4 people has a mental illness, whether or not it's diagnosed. So walk up and down your block and do the math, right? So someone's living with their mom versus someone living with us, but the issues are the issues are the issues. So if you can get out there and advocate and say, look, people, it's 2024. Let's get past this stigma. No one's asked to be sick, right? No one in this room who's diabetic or has high blood pressure asks for that, right? But you go to your doctor, you take care of your business, and it's no one's business. It's gotta be the same for the people we serve. It's no one's business but their own, and we're here to support them and to help them. So I would say if you could do that, if you have some free time, we're always looking for people to volunteer with us, serve on boards, speak out for it, advocate for us. We have groups that go up to Albany every year to speak. So even just being a voice for these people, and that could be at your local Kiwanis meeting, your local church meeting, your local whatever, when someone says something negative, be the positive spin and ask, send people to us. I think a lot of it is lack of education. People don't know. We are more than happy to sit with people and educate them. That makes our job easier. So you want to send someone our way? Gladly. I'll sit, I'll explain it to you. Larry will, Jim will, everybody here has a representative that will come and ask, come and talk, and help us be part of the solution.
And one agency that I would turn you on to, we've all heard of NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard.
Yep.
Well, there's a wonderful agency called YIMBY, Yes in My Backyard. It does that exact work. It goes into communities and it shows the power and the beauty and the success of supportive housing, what it does to real estate values, how it increases safety in the community, how it adds to the value and the complexity of the communities that we live in. So look up YIMBY online and check that out.
one of the most fascinating stories that I'll share with you that just happened to me recently, and I wish it was my idea because I would love to be able to take credit for everything. It wasn't my idea. But we moved 70 and 47, over 100 people into the Jamaica community. Into Jamaica? Anybody here from the Jamaica community? All right, great. And I give the Jamaica community credit. So they have concerned citizens for Jamaica. And the leader of that group called me and said, you know, Larry, you have your people living here now. They should participate in our, it's like a community board. They should take, if they're going to live here, they should take action and they should learn about the community. And I was like, you are 100% right. So I turned around and asked the residents, do you want to sit on this board? And they said, yeah, we do. So now they've taken the next step. But it really, I wish I had come up with that initiative. With every initiative that we're going to be working on in different communities, we're going to be doing the same thing. Because the whole goal is to be a part of your community. So, and that was the Jamaica community that was able to do that.
Okay. There's so many buildings empty, commercial buildings. Do you have bids in for these commercial buildings? Those commercial buildings just not worth the effort because of the zoning and things of that nature? Or it's just, I get that question asked a lot. You know, there's a lot of empty commercial spaces in our world right now, in the Metro New York area, particularly in the city of New York. Can we do something of utilizing them?
Sure. The buildings are worth it. We'd be happy to take them. Some has to do with funding, some has to do with community resistance. We've been working on a project in Hempstead for 40 apartments for individuals for supportive housing, people that are either at risk for homelessness. We're getting a little bit of pushback there. The building, which has kind of been falling apart for a lot of years, was originally zoned for commercial. So now to switch it to residential has been a little bit of a difficulty. So we'd love these buildings and we'd be happy to work on them and in them, but we need a little bit of support from the powers that be and the community to kind of back our plans in this. Because you're right, there's a lot of buildings, there's a lot of houses, and wouldn't you want something new and beautiful that could help someone in your neighborhood as opposed to something that's falling apart, and we'd be happy to help do it.
I think something that you've probably seen of late is the redevelopment of areas where there is a place of transit, a rail station, a major hub, and how often those places have so much empty space and land for development. So Yolanda mentioned Hempstead. We're also doing a project there right by the train station. And that's important, you know, to have affordable, residential, good quality housing by our transportation network. So I think there's a lot more we could be doing in that area, and you will see. I mean, we won't really get into the mayor today, but they did pass an important piece of legislation around the city of Yes, which is about doing affordable housing in every community across the state, not just in pockets or enclaves, but in every community, and being open and transparent about that.
Thank you. Thanks for answering that. It's a challenge. Is there, I want to open it up to questions, but these are the questions that were top of mind. Is there something that each one of you would like to share about either an initiative that you've got going in your business, or a point that you would love us all to know?
First, I actually, again, how many people are from Queens? Okay. How many people are familiar with Transitional Services Respite Program? One out of all those people. So we have a respite program on the grounds of Creedmoor Psychiatric Center. It happens to be housed on the grounds of Creedmoor. I have staff available here today that can give you more information. It's a hospital diversion program, and it's one that you can gain quicker access to than any of our other programs. So if your family member is in need of immediate psychiatric intervention, they can go ahead and receive that at the respite program rather than go into a hospital. I
didn't know that.
really recommend, again, a tour of that facility rather than anything else, even before your family member or you has a psychiatric symptom. Why? Because you're used to, just like you're used to when you get sick, running to a doctor. If you get psychiatrically ill again, you're used to running to a hospital. If somebody's going to tell you at that very moment, let's go over here to this respite program, they're not going to know what you're talking about. But if you can introduce them to the respite program before it becomes an emergency, they'll see the comfort of that and be able to utilize that service. The service there is now for 28 days. So if you're looking for other services, and it doesn't have to be through me, again, we're not in competition, I don't care. If you're looking for other services, that's a good place to start because that staff is trained in helping with getting this, they call them guests, connected to clinical services, day programs, behavioral health care, and housing. That's what they do. So my staff here have the information, the banner's right there. I would recommend that you start and go in that direction to at least become familiar with that service. And then maybe some of the other services will fall into place.
So I would say the newest thing we have happening right now is residential services for young adults. So that's, I say kids because my daughter's that age, but it's kids 18 to 25. They tend to be kind of a lost group. They come out of the children's programs. They don't really belong in the typical adult programs. They don't have a peer group. They don't have a place to go. So this housing will be specifically for this age group with the goal of getting them to transition to independence, to school, to work, or eventually to an adult service program should they need it. But it's that soft handoff which will allow that young person to make the right steps and not end up on the street, which happens unfortunately a lot with these kids. The other thing I would say is for people that have a loved one or yourselves home, we have services, all of us, in addition to housing. So maybe something like care coordination, which is just what it sounds like. You coordinate the person's level of care. You make sure their benefits are okay. You make sure that they have the services they need. They're seeing their doctors, whatever the case may be. It's an entree into an agency. It makes a connection to an agency. But if you're someone that says, you know what, my son, my daughter, my person is still very comfortable at home, but I could use an extra level of support. This gives you a support out in the community while they're still living at home. And then you've already made a connection with an organization should things change or should you need more services. So housing we're there for, but we all have all different kinds of supports. And that may be a first step before either you or your person is ready for housing.
Thank you.
In addition to that, we do a lot of work with veterans.
Yep.
A concern, we have buildings on Long Island and in New York City. Recently, we opened a bagel shop in Coney Island. If you're ever down in the Coney Island neck of the woods, please stop by 21st and Surf. We have a bagel shop known as Cyclone Bagels, and we have veterans working in that shop. It's a wonderful opportunity for them, and the bagels are great. So look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you so much. Before we end, I'd like to ask if there's anybody with questions that you would like to ask this panel. Oh, wonderful. So first, Maria in the first row. I'm going to get, just 1 second. No, Jesse's coming. Thank you, Jess.
Could you tell us the average length of time it takes from the SPA application to the, what's the average length of time it takes until housing, you actually get the housing?
Again, it depends on the level of housing that's being requested, depends on bed availability. It could be anywhere from 3 months to a year, but it depends on, that's why I'm saying, get your person on the list as soon as possible. I have beds available now in 2 of my programs that I'm not getting referrals for. If your family member is ready to be moved in, we can move them in. But now is a good time. But the general rule of thumb, the spa application doesn't take that long. It could be a week or two. No, it shouldn't take years and years. And that has nothing to do with us because the spa application goes to the city. And as I said, I've been around for a really long time and I don't even think we need a spa application. But being that as it may, you can also make to my agency, you can have somebody make a direct referral.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to publicly say that, but we do
But
take,
it's true.
we do take direct referrals. You don't have to, yes.
From the family member.
Yep, as long as it's a licensed mental health professional. They can do the referral to us directly. The telephone number is 718-526-8400.
All right, the respite, I have another question. I hope you don't mind. Is that?
Go on.
Go ahead.
Okay. The other question is the respite program that you said is available in Queens.
In
And
Queens,
it's up to 28 to 30 days.
up to 28 days.
They can stay overnight for that length of time?
Yeah, and what's good about a respite program compared to hospitalization is that when you go to
I
a
know.
hospital, you stop your life, right? You can't go to therapy, you can't go to your job, you can't. If you go to respite and you need to go to work or you need to go to therapy during the day, or you want to go visit your mother for her birthday, you can still do that.
What about Nassau County? Is there such a thing in Nassau County?
There is.
There is,
Hampstead.
Yes, and it's the,
Hampstead? Isn't it, there's a respite in Hampstead?
is it Melilla?
It's only
I don't
one.
know.
There is, we will get you.
Instead, it's
No, there's
No,
long-term
no.
respite in Nassau. We'll get it for you.
And it's called like Rainbow House or something, like it's got a,
You know who has it? Jeff. It's MH, he has, I think it's Malillo.
Oh, it's an
We'll get
FHC
you
thing. It's an
the
FHC
connection in Nassau.
yeah.
all right, thank you. I'm not gonna keep asking questions.
That's
Oh, you love us.
I have a lot of them.
I don't want to go back out to the rain, so go ahead.
Somebody else had a question back here? Where did you go?
There was somebody else in the back, I thought.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question?
While
for
you're
this
thinking about questions, I
amazing
just have,
panel? These are the guys.
I just have one more program that I want to talk to you about if you're from Queens. We have a bookstore on Bell Boulevard. How many people have been to that? Okay, good. That is an affirmative business. We are training people to get back out to work. I don't really like the testing of when we first took this over, we were testing people over and over again about what they would be good at. And I found that that was a complete waste of time because you can test into 4 million things that you could possibly be good at. Let's get people out into the world of work. And what I found out was, first of all, it's mostly consumer run, which was great. And that 50% of the people that have gone through that program have gone on to do something productive, whether it be work or volunteer or go back to school or do something else. It's pointed people in another direction. So I invite you, I didn't bring any coupons. They may have them at the table for a free book or a free, well, I used to offer coffee before the pandemic, but it's more important that people go in and see it and get that experience. This really is a neat experience. So again, a lot of us are doing more than just housing. We're rehabilitating people in many, many different areas of their life.
Okay. We have another question. Okay.
Oh, you put her up to this. You put her up to the question.
They all came together. They all came together.
Yeah, I know.
That's what we're here for.
My question is, the money that Governor Hochul set aside, you're saying that you don't have access to it? Why
Right.
not?
Okay, well, it's a little bit more of it's a complicated question, and the one that I don't even understand 100%. But before the governor said she wanted to put the $1 billion into the mental health system, one of the state agencies was supposed to work on the bonding of that money. And they did not. So when OMH sent out the RFPs that they were going to go ahead and allow people to get the housing up and running, they didn't talk to the other state agency that's supposed to do the bonding. Is it frustrating? Yes, but this is what we do and the advocacy that we do on a daily basis because we're constantly yelling and screaming.
Yes.
When I started this, I really did have hair. I swear I had hair. Jim still has hair. But we're constantly yelling and screaming to make sure, and it's really my job to go ahead and make sure that the money is finally released. Will it be released?
It will.
Not fast enough for me. Not fast enough for me, but you know what? It's not the governor's fault. There's a whole bureaucracy. You know, when I was just at a governor's roundtable in August, and she just wanted to come to say thank you to the mental health community, to 5 mental health agencies, and Transitional Services was one of them. Venture House was another, and Queens Children's Center for Progress, and then 2 other agencies. And she just, at that very moment, and it's just a government process, said, today I'm giving the mental health system $1 million. Each of you around the table is going to get $200,000. It would have been really easier for me to just get the check at that very moment and take it to the bank. That's not the way it
I know what
works.
happens.
It'll be probably a year before I see the $200,000. Will I see it? Yes. But it's not going to be, it's just not the way it works. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know exactly where I could spend the $200,000. If you're in Queens, Donovan Richards just committed $1 million to our project on Archer Avenue. Borough President Donovan Richards, he is a major advocate. I don't know if any of you heard his State of the Borough address 2 years ago. I was there, and you know how everybody is like coming out in the world. Everybody's coming out as something, as you know. Yeah, he gets up there and he says, "I'm going to come out today," and everybody figured he was going to come out with some type of sexual orientation thing. No, he said, "I'm coming out. I have a mental health problem. I am in therapy. The pandemic had a major effect on me." Major applause, specifically for those of us in the mental health field, because it really validates that, you know, you could be a politician and still have mental health issues. He's been a tremendous support, and I do thank him for that.
Any more questions? Thank you so much. And again, I can't express enough our gratitude for the 3 of you to be here. And they were very sincere. They do talk to each other. We will help you. I recommend them all the time. Anyway, thank you. I really.
I don't know.
We're always together.
Have a radio
Podcast
the other day with Tom.
I came in late, but I would like to find out that this is residential programs. That's for consumer with
Mental health, yes.
My child has 2 diagnoses, you know, mental and.
Right. Thank you all for being here. Please continue to get something to eat. I don't know if walk is going to happen. It's pouring outside, but Kieran's going to walk around and introduce all the nonprofits that worked very hard to be here today. We really appreciate their participation. So just going to very casually walk around and introduce everybody. Thank you.
Oh, walk around? Oh, great. All right. Is this on? Hello? Okay, guys, so I'm just gonna walk around and introduce some of the organizations that are here today. Also, really important, I want to make sure everybody knows that you can still buy raffle tickets. So that's always fun, right? To leave a Sunday afternoon with a nice prize. So the first one here is Risewell Community Services. Thank you guys for being here. This group here, hold on. This is TSI New York Transitional Services. Yeah. And next here is Options for Community Living. Thanks for being here, guys. And this is Into the Light, Meaningful Recovery from Psychosis, where there is a film called Into the Light.
Right, exactly. Yes, so you need the TD, so either start with your.
Okay, this is outpatient for psychiatry and therapy. Psychiatry, that's a great name, you guys. Psychiatry, love that.
That stands for Preserve a Mom.
Okay, and this is called Preserve a Mom Project. Great. This one right here is MSF, Meester, Ceiling, and Fine. What do you guys do?
I'm a mental health lawyer, Jamie Rosen.
Oh, wow. And what do you do with that?
So as a mental health lawyer, I really help families navigate any type of mental health crisis. So whether it's hospitalization, guardianship, anything that touches mental health, I really educate and help empower family members to advocate for their loved ones within the legal system.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, there's somebody here that I think I'm going to get them to come over to you because they were just looking for a lawyer, mental health lawyer. So give me 1 second. I will tell them to come over. And this over here, this group is called Concern Mental Health Housing. This is Project First, with the Well Life Network. The Fortune Society, Building People, Not Prisons. Guys, what do you guys do?
So we are a nonprofit criminal justice agency. We help assist people who are coming home from state incarceration, get connected to the services that they need. We offer mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment. We offer anger management, domestic violence, housing, applications for benefits if people need. We also offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner at our location in Long Island City. We have a bunch of wraparound services at our agency, and we are happy to help people who have been impacted by the justice system.
Great. Thank you so much for your service. Fascinating. Okay, next we have Zucker Hillside Hospital, Northwell Health, as well as South Oaks Hospital, Northwell Health. And again, more from Northwell Health, the Katz Institute for Women's Health. What do you guys do?
Yes, we are a network of clinicians over the health system, and we connect women to different clinicians to raise women's health.
Thank you so much. And that's everybody, I believe. Thank you all for being here. Reminder, the raffle continues.
I don't know.
No, just the first year. This is here.